I have to get this 66 Mustang ready for its owners to take it on a 500-mile road trip to its new home. But there's one small problem. It doesn't even run. Stick around, because it turns out that was only the beginning. So, all we know about this Mustang is that it got pulled out of a garage where it had been sitting for years. Prior to that, it wasn't running right, so it got parked and forgotten, including its full tank of gas. So with that information, let's start with the carburetor.
Let's get this air cleaner off and get a look in here. Oh man, that smells. I can already smell it. I didn't even crack the throttle yet. No fuel squirtage when pumping the throttle. So, what that tells me is that the accelerator pump in this is either bad or it's gummed up. All right, so let's go ahead and get a little bit of fresh gas down in here. It'd be much easier to put this in a bottle, but who's got the time? Just a little bit. Okay, we got the garage door open, nothing in the way. Could it be that simple? Oh, all right, okay. That's probably not even doing anything, but. All right, we got combustion. Let's try it again. See if that brought it around at all. Oh, okay, she's not wanting to stay running. All right, so we got this one from the battery and S on that one from the ignition. So, I was gonna say, all right, wow, must have been really easy to steal these things. Okay. Oh, that starter. All right, I am just not convinced that this needle isn't stuck. There's really no good place to be right in here. Just fitting. All right, come on. Reverse. So this is a new one for me. Yeah. With all the running and the shaking, I think that actually shook into reverse. The shift linkage must be off. Because, oh my goodness, look at this. So, that was park, and just a little bit seems to start bringing it back into reverse. Well, that's terrifying. All right, so I think that only took about a year or two off my life. Come on, you're right there. All right, so I was really convinced that the needle was stuck, but the tapping trick just doesn't seem to be doing anything here. So I think I've figured out what I'm going to do next. I'm going to pull this fuel line off, and we're going to see if we're getting any fuel up to the carburetor at all, because maybe the pump went bad or is bad. And then if we do have fuel there, then I'm going to take a look at the needle on this carburetor. It actually helps that this is a Holley 1940, because the needle and seat is right here at this fitting that goes into the front of the carb. So I don't actually have to take the whole carb apart to get to the needle. So let's check that out. Okay, so it's got this steel line, a little length of rubber hose with some clamps on it, and then the fuel filter. So let's go ahead and Slide this clamp back. There's a little fuel there. Not a lot. Yeah, okay, there was some fuel in there. Alright, can blow through it easily, so I don't think the fuel filter is an issue. Let's back this fitting out, which is apparently where the needle and seat are. There's probably a gasket on here, so let's make sure I don't lose that. Okay. Gasket is still on there. That's good. There's the needle, which actually doesn't seem to want to be moving. It's stuck in. So I can pull it out. Yeah, there you go. That should be moving freely like that. All right, let's yeah, okay. Try not to get any on the gasket here. It seems to be moving freely now. All right, let's throw this back in and see if we can get it to start up. At least then we'll know what the problem is and we can rule out the fuel pump. All right, let's see what we got. Hey, there we go. Still got my foot on the gas a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna back it off. Foot is off the gas. Oh, that is one big exhaust leak. Yes! Yes! Wow, that's loud. She seemed to smooth out, not shaking as much. That's for the accelerator pump. Look for the stumble when I snap the throttle. That. There you go. Perfect example. I snapped the throttle and it's not getting that squirt of fuel from the accelerator pump. Oh, it starts right back up. All right. All right, she runs. So I just took her for a quick test drive, and man, she is not happy. Didn't like that. I suspect at the very least a carburetor rebuild and a tune-up are in order. I just got a bunch of parts in, so let's start by taking the carburetor off, and we'll go from there. All right, so here it is. It's just a little fella. So if we come here to the front, this is the accelerator pump linkage. Comes up and around the side of the carb to the back where the throttle is. And if I work the throttle, you can actually see that the accelerator pump linkage is moving.
So it should be working the accelerator pump. So I'm expecting that once we get in here, we're going to see that there is in fact a bad accelerator pump. Let's keep going. My goodness. Get in here and look at this. So these are the floats here, 1 and 2. They're connected by this arm that runs all the way across, and there's a center pin here. Now, as the floats rise and fall, as the fuel level rises, the float will rise, and then there's a tab right here that presses against the needle, and that controls fuel flow. So when the float bowl is full, it shuts off the fuel flow, and when they drop down and it needs more fuel, they drop, the tab comes off of the needle, and it lets more fuel in. These are completely stuck in place. They're not. That's it. That's all I can get out of it. This is supposed to move freely. All right, we're putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So I ran some of these as well as some pipe brushes to clean out any of the circuits, any of these tiny passages, and everything seems nice and clean. Sprayed some carb cleaner through. We got fluid flowing through everything. Blasted everything out with some compressed air. I think we're looking good. So now we're ready to start taking a look at the rebuild kit. Got a Standard Motor Products 540. They had one for the 1940 carb, so perfect. Don't need that anymore. Should be good to go. So let's start getting this thing back together. Accelerator pump's looking good. With the carburetor rebuilt and finally back on, we can continue with the tune-up now and actually get the spark plugs out, take a look at those, and see what they have to tell us. And what they're telling us here is a sad, sad story. What we have here is a lineup of spark plugs with various different issues. Plugs 1 and 2 show classic signs of carbon fouling, dry black sooty deposits caused by the carburetor's various issues and just running way too rich. Plug 3 is the oddball of the group. You can see a lot of ash deposits here, and this points to a lean condition or possibly even running too hot. Plug 4 looks exactly like 1 and 2. This one was running rich. 5, on the other hand, this one is oil fouled. It's absolutely caked with oil. This one's pretty bad. And lastly, number 6 is showing more of the same from earlier. I'm thinking what we're going to do next, before I put the new spark plugs in, let's do a compression test and a leak down test. The compression test will show us the overall health of the engine, and the leak down test is going to let us know if we do have leaks anywhere, possibly bad piston rings or valves maybe not sealing 100%. But if anything's wrong, it'll point us in a direction and tell us what's going on. So for anybody that might be unfamiliar with the compression test, we can just run through this real quick. You get a special gauge with the compression tester, and it's got a bunch of fittings and lines, and all you do is connect that to the spark plug hole for the first cylinder that you're going to be working on. Take all the spark plugs out. That'll make it easier for the engine to crank and perform your test.
And what's going to be happening is as the engine cranks, the piston's going to be coming up through its compression stroke. It's going to be compressing, well, it would be compressing the air inside the cylinder, and it's going to push up here on this gauge and give you your reading. Now what we're looking for is consistency. So if, let's say for example, every one of these cylinders reads 100 psi on the gauge, but one of them reads something like 70, I have a 30% loss in compression for that piston. Something is wrong. So that is how we're going to use this to figure out what's going on with these cylinders. Okay, now here's where you come in. I'm going to get in the car and crank the engine 5 or 6 times. I need you to get in close on that gauge and tell me what the readings are. All right, cylinder number 1, you ready? About 150, pretty good. All right. We're all hooked up to cylinder 2 now. Let's run it again. Cylinder 3, here we go. Don't fall asleep on me. Number 4. Number 5, this is one we wanted to keep an eye on. Ready? Oof. Hey, last one, number 6. Cross your fingers for that starter. We were actually blasting some crud out while we were doing that. See all that? Okay, so with the compression test done, we can go ahead and look over all our numbers here in a moment. Then after we get all of this away, we can get to the leak down tests, and that is going to be the fun part. Okay, so here's what we got. One that's maybe just a little bit questionable, and as expected, one that is definitely questionable. All right, so say hello to the leak down tester. It's going to hook up to the car exactly the same way that the compression tester did. We just got some fancy valves and knobs and doodads that we get to play with. So I'm going to start the leak down test right here at number 5, the one that we know is the worst so far. I have the remote starter hooked up. I'm going to use that to bump it over and find top dead center, because when we do the leak down test, that cylinder has to be at top dead center. So I'll just place my thumb over the spark plug hole, and I'll keep cranking this over until I feel it push air out on my thumb, and then we'll know that that's on the compression stroke. That was it. I just passed it. Right there. So now we're going to want to do some fine adjustments, because I want to find right where this hits the very top. It goes up all the way, and then it's going to hang there for a second while I rotate, and that is top dead center. That'll be where both the exhaust and the intake valve are closed, which is what we want for the leak down test. So it's still coming up a little bit now, still rising a little bit. Right there it stopped, and I was able to turn that a little bit more with no movement. So that's top dead center, number 5 cylinder on the compression stroke. We can go ahead and get this fitting in for the leak down tester. So when you do a leak down test and you do actually see that there is a substantial leak, you can usually diagnose it a little further by listening for where the leak is coming from. So if it's a leaking intake valve and the air is getting past the intake valve, you'll usually hear air hissing from the carb. If it's an exhaust valve, you can usually go to the tailpipe and hear it hissing through there. If you have a bad head gasket, you can either see bubbling or hear it from the top of the radiator. Or in this case, if the rings aren't sealing, you'll be able to hear it coming out from the oil filler cap. And this is what that sounds like. So this is interesting. I have the leak down tester hooked up to the number 3 cylinder, which is the other one that was slightly down on compression. And right now, there is a hissing sound coming from the crankcase, the carburetor, and the exhaust. And get this, the number 2 cylinder spark plug hole and the number 4 cylinder spark plug hole. And I'm showing a pretty big loss here. I guess here's a little bit of good news. The coolant isn't bubbling, so I guess no air is making it into any of the coolant passageways. So what is this telling us? Well, hissing into the crankcase rings, hissing out of the carburetor intake valve, hissing out of the exhaust valve, and then hissing into adjacent cylinders number 2 and number 4. Probably a cracked head gasket. All right, so here's the deal. This was going to be part 2. Throw the carb rebuild on, get the new spark plugs in, finish checking the ignition, and go for a test drive and see how she runs. Well, it spiraled wildly out of control. So unfortunately, I got to take the carburetor that I just put back on, take it off, and then we're going to get any of these heater hoses and lines out of the way, unbolt the exhaust manifold, and then get this cylinder head out of here. So let's get to it.
Or let's not, because I haven't even started disassembly yet, and I've already found another red flag.
You know, going along, checking each of these push rods, and be honest, every single one of them is spinning. And at least one of these valves has to be open. But then I get to this guy. What? It's one of those wireless push rods. So you're just here for moral support. If we look from over here, it's this guy here. So we follow that rocker arm and that valve spring. It looks like that's for an intake port. So that is an intake valve. Oh man. Well, if we can just pull this out, let's at least pull it out and take a look. Why is this able to just come out like this? It's got to be bent or something, right? That looks pretty straight to me.
Anyway, let's keep going. So after we get the carburetor, any lines, hoses, and the exhaust removed, you may notice that the intake manifold is actually integrated into the cylinder head. So both of those are going to come off as one unit. That coolant is not looking too great. Yeah, we're definitely going to do a flush and get some fresh coolant in there. Look at this. And all this sediment.
Now, these heater hoses aren't in the worst shape that I've ever seen, but they all have to come off for this job anyway, so I'm just going to plan on replacing all of them. The upper and lower radiator hose also feel especially squishy, so I'm going to be replacing these as well. I should have gotten all this out of here before I took the valve cover off. Who knows when the last time these exhaust manifold bolts were removed, so I'm going to soak them all down in some PB Blaster. I'd much rather not break one. Ooh. And that's gonna be the only one I can use that on. Well, this explains the exhaust leak. Alright, onto the head bolts. The impact socket wouldn't reach through here, so we're going with the big bar and the wrench. Holy shit. I can't help but wonder how many years I got left before I pull something by doing this move. And here is the cylinder head. Definitely not the prettiest looking thing. But if we take a close look, no obvious serious damage. No cracks in between the combustion chambers like you might normally see on certain heads. There doesn't seem to be any obvious damage. There's no cracks, no tears.
Nothing like that. So I don't think the head gasket was the issue. Now we can take a look at the block. A quick visual inspection. Everything here looks pretty good as well. Nothing abnormal. Just some carbon buildup.
Alright, so now we got to check the cylinder head for flatness. Although it may seem flat at first initial glance, we're talking thousandths of an inch here, things that you're not going to see with the eye. So I have the Ford service manual here for 1966, and if we go down here for cylinder head, it's got for the 200 3 thousandths of an inch for any 6 inches, or 7 thousandths of an inch for the overall length of the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this precision straight edge and a set of feeler gauges, and we're going to check. Let's start with the overall length and see if it's within spec. Okay, so I've been working through the sizes here, going up a size at a time to see just where it'll finally start to catch like it is here. But it just catches right there, but if we come up here, it does pass through. So, want to know what size I'm on? 16 thousandths. 16 thousandths is the largest size I was able to get to that just fit underneath this straight edge. That is more than double than the overall 7 thousandths spec for the overall length. Not good. Alright, so I've checked everywhere on the block now. Unfortunately, not even 2 thousandths fits under there. So the block seems to be good. Okay, so I think it's safe to say that we found our problem. And that makes sense too, because it's really going to be the worst here in the center when it's cupped like that. The good news is the deck surface on the block seems pretty darn straight, and that lifter was fine too and not collapsed. So I think someone maybe just didn't install that push rod right when they dropped the whole rocker arm shaft down. Okay, so I always try to do everything that I can myself. But with this situation, it's just not happening. There are ways that you can surface a head yourself using like a granite surface plate, really thick float glass, stuff like that, and sandpaper. And you can kind of surface it yourself that way. But at 15 thousandths or 16 thousandths of an inch off, like this one is here in the center, that's a lot. So this cylinder head is going to be brought to a machine shop where they can use precision equipment to get this surfaced and within spec. So that means it's time to strip the whole head.
I'm using my Goodson clamp style valve spring compressor here. I highly recommend one of these over the one-hand operated valve spring compressor doodads. But anyway, I don't actually have to be stripping everything myself here. The machine shop would have included all this and what's going to get done anyway. But I want to take a good look at the valves, the seats, the valve guides, all that stuff. And hopefully taking a close look at everything will give me some good experience for the next time. I got the parts loaded up, so I'm going to head over to the machine shop now. I expect it's going to take probably 1 or 2 weeks for them to get the work done. So while we wait, we're going to come back and get some other repairs done on the Mustang in the meantime. I want to allow the cylinders to soak in the meantime. Hopefully that'll free up some sticky piston rings. There's supposed to be a bushing here on the outside, as well as one here on the inside. Good. And good. Goes through all the gears very nicely. That's going to be so much better. It's going to be safer, and this isn't going to be flopping around anymore. The rear leaf springs are sagging pretty noticeably, and the bushings look like they're shot. So let's get that all out and replace everything. This front spring eye bolt feels like it's spinning in the sleeve. Yep, that bolt is seized to the inner sleeve, so it was all turning as one piece. Got the brand new leaf springs here, with the bushings already pre-installed. And also got all new hardware. Next I'll replace the heater hoses, and on these early Mustangs, that means I have to drop the heater box. This tank is filled to the brim, so this gas gauge isn't working properly. I'm going to ground out the sending unit wire. This should cause the gas gauge to pin to full, which means that the wiring and the gauge itself are working properly. And if that's the case, then I need to look at the sending unit that's inside the tank. Yep, time to drain all the gas. And here's the sending unit. It's pretty rough. The float is completely gone and the arm was stuck. The resistance reading should be moving smoothly as I move the arm from the full to empty position. They're all over the place. Whereas on this new one, they're moving nice and steady. So I'll get this new one in the car. That is aligned smack dab on the empty line. Alright, so I got the head back, but there's something I gotta do first. With how nice this car looks on the outside, it's gotta look equally as nice under the hood, right? So this head has a fresh paint job. It was milled 20 thousandths to be within spec again. It got a full valve job, new valves, some valve guide inserts, new valve springs, and new valve seals. This thing is fully reconditioned and ready to go. So while I do trust the machine shop, it's always a good idea to verify. People do make mistakes. We're only human after all. Here I'm using a 2000s feeler gauge to double check the flatness of the cylinder head. With everything ready to go, let's get the rest cleaned, prepped, and get this back on the car. Slide this into place and all the holes line up nice. This head bolt appears to enter a coolant passage, so I'm going to put some PTFE sealant on the bolt threads. This will prevent any leaks. Looks like we'll be torquing the head bolts down in 3 steps. I'll put a dab of assembly lube on both ends of the push rod. That'll add some extra protection for this first startup. I'm starting to see how easy it could be to miss a push rod. Maybe that's what happened to the last guy. One of the last things I want is for this thing to throw a belt 200 miles into their road trip. This is cheap insurance, so putting all new belts on. Almost forgot about this guy down here, and that has got to go. Much better. Now that the cylinder head's installed, we can go ahead and finish off the heater hoses and cut these to length. Everything under here turned out nice and tidy, and that blue really pops, so I'm extremely happy, and I hope the owners will be too. Play the game of chance. How's my aim today? Oh, right in there. Got my trusty spray gun cleaning bottle here. I'm gonna use that to fill up the fuel bowls. Okay, double check. Didn't touch the oil. I'll change that after when I know that it runs well. That way I'm not getting more gas in it if it doesn't. Fuel in the carb. We got coolant. All the coolant lines are hooked up. Fuel lines are hooked up. All the spark plug wires are in. All hooked up to the distributor. Belts are good. Fan is good. Exhaust is good. Okay.
Wow, she fired right up. Look at how smooth she's running. Oh man. Oh wow, she's got power right there now. All right, let me give her some time.
That is the first time my carbon monoxide detector has ever gone off. It's late, so let's call it a night. Tomorrow morning, we'll start detailing.
top, he said. Yeah, still on there.
absolute night and day difference from before. Alright guys, so that is going to wrap this one up. I had so much fun with this Mustang. There was so much more to do than we originally thought, but gave me a great opportunity to really dive into these old Mustangs, which I really had no experience with. Never been up close to them, nothing. So I got to learn a whole bunch. Got to learn some of Ford's engineering stuff from the 60s and some older stuff that I haven't worked on before. And really got to get familiar with these old 60s Mustangs, and it's been a blast. But as with everything, all good things must come to an end, and I gotta give this car back to the owner now.
300 miles in, the car is running great. Thanks, Brian.
After hundreds of miles and 0 issues, she made it. Now this Mustang is free to roam for years to come.